What is up, guys? Welcome to Straight Edge Wrestling Top 10. This week on our new series, we're going to be looking at what we believe to be the top 10 hardcore matches in WWE's universe. So what we consider to be hardcore may not be what other people consider to be hardcore. What we think really defines a hardcore match.
Oh, not the extreme version of a hardcore match.
Yeah, we're not talking about glass and barbed wire galore necessarily.
It's not even that. You don't have to have that thing where it's all extreme, hitting, smashing the crap out of each other, one another, having to bleed. A lot of those matches are on the list. I'm not going to say that at all. But it's growing up through the Attitude Era and seeing that you need to have that good mix of sort of comedy in it with the violence, with things, and it all mixes well together.
Yeah, it's a gimmicky match. That's the whole point of the hardcore match. It's a gimmicky match, and some of the highest points of my opinion, I know you agree as well, during the hardcore division in the WWF came from the hardcore 24/7 title, and most of that stuff was quite gimmicky, quite over the top, humorous, not necessarily CZW levels of violence.
Sort of thing. Well, some of it can come under what R-Truth does.
Absolutely, yes, exactly that. So let's kick this off with a match which I'd forgotten about, but you reminded me of. So number 10 on our list is Hardcore Holly versus Al Snow from WWF St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1999.
One of my favourites.
So this match,
I completely forgot it actually splits off. It starts off as a match in the ring, then later on they come back to it and they find a full wrestling.
Yeah, so this match went through multiple different venues. It included a hell of a lot of unprotected chair shots to the head from Bob Holly and Al Snow. It starts in the ring and then it goes out into the wilderness where they found a lake and where Bob Holly and Al Snow decide to try and drown each other.
No, it was Hardcore Holly trying to betray him.
Trying Al Snow, that's a good point. And the match ended when Bob Holly tied Al Snow up into a load of metal meshing from a fence and pinned him as he couldn't escape as he's wriggling around. So this, as we said, this sort of encapsulates WWF Attitude Era hardcore goofiness.
Yep.
Whilst also actually being really hard hitting because they beat the living hell out of each other with every weapon they could find.
Well, let's be honest, Hardcore Holly was always renowned for being quite a hard hitter.
In the number 9 spot, we have a complete shift, really, because this is now a more serious match of Edge versus Mick Foley at WrestleMania 22. So this match,
more modern day era style.
Yes, and this match, if you remember correctly, came from where Edge was claiming to be more hardcore than the hardcore legend himself, Mick Foley.
Well, this was actually for the Hardcore Championship. They brought it back.
They did, yeah.
Mick Foley bought it out off of his shelf from home.
They did, and then it was disappeared after that. This match saw everything that lots of hardcore wrestling fans either love or people who hate hardcore wrestling really hate: barbed wire, thumbtacks, and even a flaming table, which has probably become one of the most iconic images in sort of WrestleMania and hardcore wrestling, with Foley being speared through the barbed wire table.
Well, yeah, it was more. No, what sold that best was the iconic moment. Isn't that bit like when they go? It's Edge's face as they go through the flaming table. That's what makes this match remembered.
Yeah, because Edge just dived face first into fire, basically.
And stated that he almost lost his eyebrows and that. And
it singed most of his body hair off.
His face afterwards, and he was generally shaking afterwards.
Yes. And moving on from that, this goes quite neatly into number 8, which was after this, Edge and Mick Foley became a tag team. And number 8 on our list is where Edge and Mick Foley took on the hardcore icon Terry Funk and Tommy Dreamer at ECW One Night Stand 2006. Now, this pay-per-view was probably best known for John Cena entering the ECW arena to "If Cena Wins, We Riot." But this match was just about as hardcore gets. Terry Funk left
the good old ECW days, yeah.
Yeah, the before WWE ruined ECW, this was basically their last hurrah before WWE killed ECW over the next few years. Terry Funk was battered and bloodied. He left the match and came back all bandanaed up, covered in blood, bandaged up halfway through the match. And there was once again a lot of barbed wire floating around, a barbed wire board and bat. There was more fire and a hell of a lot of blood. And if you remember, in each tag team's corner, you had Lita in one corner, Beulah McGillicuddy in the other, and Edge won the match by pinning Beulah by basically humping her in the middle of the ring. He bent her legs back over her head and basically humped her.
He was renowned for that point, doing a lot of humping on TV. So
yeah, that's a weird thing to suddenly become known for, isn't it?
Well, he's a rated R superstar. What do you expect?
Yeah. And at our number 7 position is one a match which you once again reminded me of. John Cena versus Randy Orton, Breaking Point 2009.
What, the match that made me realise John Cena is the toughest son of a bitch in the business?
Yes. Basically, it was 20 minutes of John Cena getting his ass kicked, being hit by steel ring steps and bamboo sticks constantly, and not giving up. That's essentially what this match was.
Yeah.
It's a pattern throughout John Cena's career where he just would get hit by everything.
Well, it's not only that though as well. He's never lost an I Quit match.
No.
And he's thinking for that, and that was one of the things they made a big deal in the build up of this. He's never lost an I Quit match, and he will not quit. And he sticks to it, even though his face in the match tells otherwise.
Yes, there's a lot of times where they do the handcuff thing in matches, where people are handcuffed and they just get brutalized. This, I think, may be the best example of it being done right. And talking of Randy Orton leads us nicely into number 6 on the list, which also features again Mick Foley. Orton versus Mick Foley from Backlash 2004.
What, the night that set off Randy Orton's career, and
exactly
that comes from his mouth as well.
It is. There's quite a pattern here, isn't there? Where lots of people have said about how Mick Foley has sort of made their careers, and Mick doesn't really get the dues, I think, which he damn well deserves. This is and
you know what? It was the Undertaker that set off Mick Foley's career.
Exactly.
Almost ended his career, but
then 2 things in one night: almost ended it and blew it up all in one. But we had Orton and Mick tore the living crap out of each other in this match once again. Lots of barbed wire. This was
but this match was what, the third time they met in the end.
Yes.
And how they built the story to get to this point was great. So
amazing.
It was a great final piece.
Yeah, and this was where Orton was doing like some of his best work in when he was younger, being that cocky, arrogant legend killer. It was just one of my favorite things. Going back and rewatching this match this week, actually, I love it so much. Just because, also, I forgot how much I loved Randy Orton's entrance. The music, the fireworks, everything. Just how much you hated Randy Orton at the time because he was such an arrogant asshole, and I love it. I love everything about it. And number 5 on our list is another John Cena appearance with JBL versus John Cena from Judgment Day 2005.
One of my most favorite matches. It's fucking gory. It's entertaining. There's a lorry with a DJ deck on it.
Yeah. So this was the main event for the WWE Championship of Judgment Day. Obviously, Cena had just won the title from JBL a month earlier at WrestleMania 21.
And the backstory for it was the guys in the back, higher ups, didn't think John Cena would be able to last as a main eventer, and JBL, and he said, was like, no, he will, and we'll go out there and prove it. And that's what they did.
Yeah. For all the shit that there is about JBL, and there's a lot of shit about JBL, he's not a nice person. I think you may agree. There's 2 people that really boosted John Cena's career in his time: Kurt Angle and JBL. They're the 2 which sort of boosted him to stardom. I don't think without that JBL,
that and rivalry, Jericho, because the Jericho rivalry when he went over to Raw was really
when he first drafted. Yeah,
when Jericho got sacked for the 7th time.
Yeah. But I think JBL sort of was that first key rivalry, and everyone hated JBL. He was such an arsehole, and they still do. But even his character, he was such an arsehole.
Hate him. They hate him now for other reasons.
For his real life stuff. But he was so hated that having Cena overcome him at WrestleMania 21 was great, and then having that it's quite an iconic image of JBL begging Cena, covered in blood, begging Cena at Judgment Day 2005. That's such a good match.
It was the bit where he ended where he said, I quit, and then did the mind thing because he didn't want to go through the glass.
Yeah, and he went through it anyway.
Yep.
Do you know, this is one of the very few matches, I've got it on my notes here, it's one of the very few matches that's happened since the Attitude Era ended, which is rated mature on the WWE Network. Because it's that graphic. It is. There's only a handful of matches which has got the MA rather than the PG rating.
Well, yeah, they both bled well, and John Cena. That was a point to proving it. John Cena had to bleed, and he had to bleed badly to prove to the guys in the back.
And they both bled an awful lot. Probably we haven't seen bleeding like that since. I don't think.
I don't know. Ric Flair was bleeding like that a lot.
Yeah, but Ric Flair just basically gets a paper cut on his forehead and he's covered. So Ric Flair's aside. In number 4, we have sort of his protege as such, Triple H versus Shawn Michaels from SummerSlam. This was
the peak of their rivalry.
Yeah, this was when Shawn Michaels had retired after his loss to Stone Cold all those years previous with his back injuries. And Shawn Michaels basically recovered, wanted to come back to wrestling. And the story was that Triple H wasn't quite so happy with seeing his old friend return.
Well, no, let's be honest. That gets shown in the match when he gets his sledgehammer and he hits him in the. He has him in that near him and hits him in the back.
Yeah. This is one of the most. I'd say maybe the most like gruesome match on our list.
Oh yeah, they both bleed bad. There's blood everywhere across the ring and everything.
Yeah, and it was perfect because I think this was around that sort of era where you'd had Austin had left, The Rock was.
You were in that cross period between Attitude to the rest.
And this was the moment which like Triple H was sort of made as his own single star. And Shawn Michaels came back and wrestled for another decade, which no one saw coming. But this was a blood feud, a proper blood feud, which we don't really get much of in WWE now, like a real blood feud.
What?
Like I think maybe Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, that sort of thing.
Aren't they supposed to technically be in Triple H's mind like the next DX version?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah,
be really good friends, then hate each other and try to kill each other, and then be really good friends again.
So I think that's where it all sort of comes from. Yeah, I think if you look at the parallels between Triple H and Shawn and Tommaso and Gargano, it's quite relevant.
Problem is though, those two aren't as funny as Triple H and Shawn Michaels.
No, that's true, but few people are. But then we have in our number 3 spot, Kurt Angle versus Shane McMahon from King of the Ring 2001. One of the most iconic matches in the past 20 years, without a doubt. And not really for anything other than the fact that it's made you realize just how much of a damn badass son of a bitch Shane McMahon is, and Kurt Angle for that matter.
Well, let's be honest, Kurt Angle broke stuff in that match.
Yeah, Kurt Angle broke his tailbone, his coccyx, and carried on. Shane McMahon was supposed to be, iconically was supposed to be suplexed through the glass of the King of the Ring sign, and someone who was in charge of props forgot to install sugar glass. So instead what happened was he just hit, bounced, and his skull just thumped on the floor of the concrete outside, and he just told Kurt to do it again.
Yeah, but he also called Kurt a pussy as well.
He did. He called him a pussy to try and make him do it again.
But as Kurt said, if he didn't break his ass, he probably could have done it in one go.
Yeah, and then even worse, he finally gets him through the glass. They're on the inside, and Shane tells him to throw him back through the glass to the outside, and it happens again. He just hits and bounces off the floor, and then he eventually gets him through. Again. Yeah, and he eventually gets him through, and the match continues. That's the worst thing is after that, where Shane was clearly concussed, the match continued in the ring and was ended with an angle slam balancing on a board from the top rope. Just an insane match. And we know now from like Pritchard's podcast and others' podcasts that Vince McMahon was backstage going loopy, trying to call an audible to get this match canned. And Shane essentially was ignoring the ref when the ref was saying, "Hey, Vince is saying go home." And Shane was thinking, "Nah, I'm good." God, this is such an iconic match. And do you know what this match was as well? It showed how Shane could wrestle. This was the first time that actually showed him wrestling. Yeah, I know it's like Kurt is Kurt, so he can wrestle, but he managed to get Shane in a good match. I think that's the last time we saw Shane actually wrestling until he fought AJ Styles all those years later.
So yeah, I fully agree.
Yeah. And in number 2, we have what is personally my favorite, not my favorite hardcore match, but my favorite match altogether, which is bizarre because Triple H has never been up on my list. But Cactus Jack versus Triple H from Royal Rumble 2000. It is an iconic match because, once again, this is the moment where Cactus was making Triple H. This was the year 2000. Austin was gone at this point, obviously to come back a bit later, but he was gone at this point. The Rock was still there, but they needed another number 2, and Triple H was that person. This match was where they introduced Mick Foley's barbed wire bat, and it tore the living shit out of Triple H's calf. Mick Foley and Triple H set up a triad of matches which they tore the living crap out of each other. They had their match on Raw where he pile drived him on the table at the top of the ramp. Then they had this, and then they had the Hell in a Cell match. The 3 of them together, it was an incredible feat to try and put Triple H over, essentially. This match ended when The Rock came down and battered Triple H over the head with a steel chair, and Triple H got his leg completely torn up from barbed wire and from a pallet that he was doing a move on.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it's really actually like, it's not one of the most gruesome matches by any means, but these two worked hard, and it was thumbtacks galore. I just remember to this day just seeing all those thumbtacks all over Triple H's back and shit, and it's just such an iconic match. But in our number 1 spot, basically we agreed on this immediately because it's both of our most favorite hardcore match, and it may not
my favorite WrestleMania too.
From what is considered to be the best WrestleMania ever, and probably is the best WrestleMania ever. So this may not be what people often consider hardcore, as we say, but it is Raven versus Kane versus the Big Show for the hardcore title at WrestleMania 17. And this is what epitomizes Attitude Era hardcore to me, definitely.
Yeah.
The 3 of these men just brawling all over the arena. They built sets at the back just for them to tear through, you know.
What do you mean tear through? Just for them to drag down Raven around through?
Yeah. That's
and
the funniest
thing. The funniest thing I found in this match was when Kane got on a golf club and by accident ran over Raven's leg.
Yeah, as he's just walking away, he just sort of gets hit in the back and falls down. It's such. I don't think this match gets everything it's due, because it is such an iconic match, such a cool match, especially in that massive arena, stadium they were in, brawling throughout it.
For the card it's on, it won't quite get anything because you had the Austin and Rock feud second, you had the Vince and Shane, which was starting off Invasion. But at the end of the day, it was still, and you had Triple H Undertaker, which is my second favorite match on the card because it was this is my favorite match on that card.
See, it's the thing, because that card was so strong. WrestleMania X7 was so strong. This sort of gets buried in it, and I know it's not everyone's cup of tea because it made hardcore a bit gimmicky and all that. But as you say, that's exactly what Attitude Era hardcore was supposed to be.
Yeah, you got your your hardcore, and you kind of then have the category of like your extreme hardcore, which is just pure barbaric. Yeah,
exactly. And I think this is the sort of hardcore which is enjoyable to watch. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of shots to the head, which you're not going to get nowadays, but there's lots of that sort of stuff. But as a whole,
these days you get stapled to the tongue, which is quite funny.
That's true. But or cigarette burns and things like that if you're Jimmy Havoc. But they, just brawling throughout the arena, throwing each other through glass and through the walls of that built up thing, and then running each other over with golf carts. What more do you want? Those are our top 10. Those are the Straight Edge Wrestling top 10 hardcore matches in WWE's universe history. Join us next time for another edition of Straight Edge Wrestling Top 10. Follow us on Twitter at SCW_podcast and subscribe down below. We will see you next time. We are out.